Before we begin this incredible story of pride and unexpected grace, I have a tiny request. If you're loving these dramatic tales, please show your support by hitting that subscribe button and ringing the notification bell. It's free, and it helps this channel grow more than you know. Now, let's dive in. Where are you joining us from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. I love hearing from all of you. The crystal glass shattered against the marble fireplace with a sound like gunfire. Shards rained onto the pristine hearth, glinting in the light of the chandelier as amber bourbon bled into the white stone. For the last time, Theodore, I am not lonely. I'm selective. Oliver stood amidst the dissipating echo, his chest tight. Around him, his four closest friends, or the men he paid to act like it, stared, their smirks frozen. The air in the penthouse living room, usually perfumed with his wealth, now stank of expensive cologne and condescension. Selectively miserable, then, drawled Simon, swirling his own drink. The point stands. The celestial gala is in 3 hours. Show up with another vapid model and the press calls you a playboy. Show up alone again and they'll write think pieces about the tragic isolation of Tech's young titan. It's bad for your brand, Oliver. Bad for our investments. A ripple of agreement moved through them. They were vultures in Brioni suits. Oliver felt the familiar, icy control slipping, replaced by a white-hot spike of sheer defiance. He was so tired of their curated lives, their hollow laughter, their endless analysis of his every move. It was Amelia, Simon's wife, who landed the killing blow. She ran a manicured nail around the rim of her champagne flute, her voice a silken dart. You know what would be truly iconic? If you stopped trying so hard. Bring someone real. That quiet little thing who dusts your absurd art collection. The one who jumps like a startled rabbit if you say good morning. She paused for effect, her painted lips curling. Bring the Maid. Now that would be a statement. That you're so above it all you can turn the most invisible person in the room into the most disgust. The laughter was immediate, coarse, and full of genuine delight at the concept. It wasn't just a joke. It was a social experiment proposed by a bored queen. And in that moment, Oliver's pride cracked. He saw not just an escape from their pressure, but a weapon. He would give them their spectacle, and in doing so, prove his absolute dominion over every single person in his orbit, staff included. Fine, Oliver said, his voice dropping to a dead calm that silenced the room. He set his own empty glass down with a definitive click. I'll take her. The shock was palpable, followed by a deluge of incredulous laughter and backslaps. You're insane. I'll pay 10 grand to see your face. This is the best thing you've ever done. Oliver didn't smile. He turned on his heel and strode out of the living room, the weight of their expectation a familiar cloak. He found her just outside the arched doorway, a slight figure in a dove-gray uniform, holding an empty tray. She was a statue, her wide hazel eyes fixed on the middle distance, her knuckles white on the tray's edge. She'd heard everything. Sophia, he stated. Not a question, not a request, a decree. She flinched, finally looking at him. Oliver, I was just clearing the... You will accompany me to the celestial gala tonight. Be ready at 8. The car will be at the service entrance. Her face went pale, then flushed, confusion, then a dawning horror. Sir? There must be a mistake. I have the silver to polish and the... There is no mistake. You are my guest. 8 o'clock. He left no room for argument. He was a man who issued commands that shaped markets. Directing his house staff was a trifle. He walked away, leaving her standing in the cavernous hallway, the echo of his friend's laughter seemingly still clinging to the air around her. Sophia Vance did not move for a full minute. The tray trembled in her hands. Guest. The word was so foreign in this context it felt like a slap. She thought of the mountain of medical bills for her father Robert's care back in Ohio. The relentless interest, the fragile house of cards her life was built upon. This job was the linchpin. Disobedience was not an option. She walked on numb legs back to the staff quarters, a small Spartan room at the back of the penthouse. Inside her narrow closet, behind her few uniforms, was a garment bag. With reverent hands, she unzipped it. Inside was not a gown, but a suit, a tuxedo tailored for a woman, in deep midnight velvet with satin lapels. It was her mother's, from her brief, brilliant career as a jazz pianist in another lifetime. It was the only thing of beauty Sophia owned. Her fingers traced the luxurious fabric. A hot tear of shame and anger spilled down her cheek. They thought she was a punchline, a prop. the invisible girl to be paraded for a laugh. She wiped the tear away, her jaw setting. Her mother had played for kings and drunkards with the same fierce dignity. She would not go as a joke. If she had to walk into that lion's den, she would walk in as Sophia. She would wear her mother's armor. Did you catch that shift in Sophia? From scared to determined? That's the power of dignity, friends. If you're feeling the tension already, just wait. Show me you're with us. Hit that like button and comment armor below. Where is our story touching you tonight? Phoenix, London, Mumbai? Let us know. At 7:58 p.m., Oliver stood by the limousine at the service entrance, his jaw tight. He dressed in a ruthlessly simple black tuxedo, a uniform of power. This was a tactical move, nothing more. He would make an appearance, fulfill the absurd terms of the joke, and leave. He'd already instructed his PR head to spin it as a commitment to recognizing all members of the team. A hollow lie, but the press would buy it. The heavy metal door clicked open. Sophia stepped out. Oliver's breath caught in his throat. The expected frumpy dress, the awkward heels, the terrified expression, none of it materialized. Instead, a vision in midnight velvet emerged. The woman's tuxedo fit her slender frame like a second skin, the satin lapels gleaming under the porte-cochere light. She'd swept her chestnut hair into a sleek, low knot. Her face, usually angled toward the floor, was lifted. She wore no jewelry, only a stark, quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from her core. She didn't look like a maid dressed up. She looked like an artist, a philosopher, a revolutionary quietly arriving to dismantle the party. "I'm ready, Oliver," she said, her voice steady, low. He could only nod, suddenly feeling gauche and predictable in his own expensive tailoring. He held the car door open, a reflexive act of chivalry that felt utterly misplaced. She slid in without a word, gathering the elegant tails of her jacket around her. The ride was silent. Oliver stared out the window at the blur of city lights, the echo of Amelia's laughter now sounding cheap and thin in his memory. The joke was supposed to be on her. Why did he feel like the one off balance? The celestial gala was housed at the opulent Orion Hall. A river of diamonds and silk flowed up the red-carpeted steps, flashbulbs creating a strobe effect of manufactured glamour. Oliver braced himself, then exited the car. He turned, offering a hand to Sophia. She took it, not with a trembling grip, but with a firm, brief pressure. As she rose and turned toward the gauntlet of cameras, a strange thing happened. The cacophony near their section of the carpet dimmed for a split second. Photographers, trained to spot authenticity amidst a sea of fabrication, paused. Their lenses swung from the usual socialites to the woman in the velvet tuxedo, who looked like she'd wandered in from a more interesting, more serious world. "Oliver, over here, who's your date?" a reporter shouted. Oliver opened his mouth, a bland denial on his lips. But he hesitated. The word "maid" felt like a grenade now. To say it would not be stating a fact, it would be an act of violence against the composed woman beside him. "This is Sophia Vance," he said instead, the sound of her full name in this context feeling strangely intimate. He offered nothing more. Sophia didn't flinch from the flashes. She offered the crowd a small, enigmatic smile that wasn't quite for them, and walked beside Oliver with a natural grace that made his own stride feel rigid. A whisper slithered past them as they entered the grand foyer. "Who is that? Is she European? A sculptor, maybe? See that? The power of presence. They have no idea what's coming. Don't you want to see their faces when they find out? If you're hooked, subscribe right now so you don't miss the next part. And comment velvet if you love her style." Inside, the ballroom was a constellation of crystal and arrogance. Oliver was immediately pulled into a vortex of handshakes and hollow greetings. Sophia stayed a half step behind, observing, a serene island in the chaotic sea. "Oliver, finally gracing us with your presence," boomed Philip Lennox, the gala's host. His eyes slid to Sophia, appraising, calculating her net worth in a single glance. "And you've brought a mystery. My dear, you look fascinating. What is it you do?" Oliver tensed, his mind scrambling for a vague protective lie. But Sophia spoke first. "I study the architecture of silence, Mr. Lennox," she said, her voice clear and melodic. "And tonight, I'm afraid I'm failing my coursework miserably." She gestured gracefully to the roaring room. Lennox blinked, then let out a genuine surprised laugh. "A wit! Charming!" He moved on, visibly intrigued. Oliver stared at her. "The architecture of silence?" he murmured as they moved away. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. It's easier than saying I listen to the difference between the hum of a vacuum and the hum of regret in an empty room. Both are quite profound. The statement hit him with the force of a physical blow. It was poetic, observant, and devastatingly sad. It spoke of a loneliness deeper than his own. Before he could process it, the vultures arrived. Simon, Amelia, and the rest of the cohort descended, their eyes wide with predatory glee. The joke had arrived. "Oliver, you did it," Simon crowed too loudly. "And Sophia, my dear, you clean up unrecognizably." His emphasis was a knife. Amelia circled Sophia, a panther in a gold lame gown. "That is a unique choice, sweetheart. So daring to wear a man's suit. Is it a statement?" Her tone dripped with faux curiosity laced with venom. Sophia met her gaze directly. "It's a suit. The statement is in the fit, not the gender." "Don't you think?" she replied, her tone pleasantly neutral, yet somehow making Amelia's elaborate gown seem like desperate costume. Amelia's smile tightened. The joke wasn't landing. Sophia wasn't cowering, she was parrying. Oliver felt a surge of something unexpected, not pride in his cruel plan, but a fierce protective anger on Sophia's behalf. "Amelia, the bar is that way. I think your glass needs refreshing," he said, his voice colder than the ice in the champagne buckets. The group stiffened, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. The script was going off the rails. The tension is thick. The cohort is confused, Oliver is shaken. What happens when the real truth comes out? Stay with us. Let me know in the comments right now. Who do you think is more powerful right now, Oliver or Sophia? Oliver needed air. The ballroom's noise had coalesced into a deafening roar in his skull. He guided Sophia, with a light touch on her elbow he immediately regretted, toward a terrace doors. "Are you all right?" he asked, the question startling them both. "The air will help," she said, avoiding the personal inquiry. They stepped out onto a wide stone balcony overlooking the city's glittering grid. The relative quiet was a balm. "You're handling this with remarkable composure," he said, leaning against the balustrade, watching her. Sophia didn't look at him. She gazed at the horizon, her profile sharp and beautiful in the ambient light. "You learn to be composed when the world expects you to be fragile. It's a survival tactic, not a virtue." Again, her words cut through him. "They're idiots," he muttered, a lame defense for his own actions. "They are your friends, they're transactions, with familiar faces." The admission slipped out, raw and unvarnished. He never spoke like this. Finally, she turned to him. In the dim light, her eyes held a depth of understanding that made him want to look away. "Then why perform for them? Why bring me here?" He opened his mouth. "To shame them, to prove a point, because I was angry. The truths were all ugly, selfish, and small." He couldn't voice them. His silence was his confession. Her shoulders softened, not in defeat but in a profound disappointment that was worse than anger. "I see," she whispered, and she did. She saw everything. The moment shattered as the terrace door opened again. Vanessa Sterling, Oliver's former fiancée and the queen of this particular social jungle, glided out. Her smile was a surgical instrument. "There you are, hiding from your own party, Oliver. How unlike you." Her eyes slithered to Sophia. "And you've brought your project. I must say she's lasted longer than I anticipated. You must have given her excellent talking points. The architecture of silence, very clever. Did your publicist write that?" Oliver straightened, a cold fury rising. "Vanessa, that's enough. Oh, don't be tedious." She waved a hand, stepping closer to Sophia, her voice dropping to a venomous purr meant only for them. "Let's not pretend, darling. We all know what this is. Oliver's little rebellion. The billionaire slumming it for a night to shock his friends. You're the punchline, sweetheart. A living, breathing joke. I heard them planning it. They have a bet on how long before you spill champagne on someone or curtsy." Every word was a precise poisoned dart. Oliver saw the impact on Sophia's face this time, a slight paling, a flicker in those steady eyes. The armor had a crack. "Vanessa, get out," Oliver growled, stepping between them. "Tell her the truth, Oliver," Vanessa pressed, her gaze triumphant, "or I will. Does she know you only brought her because Simon's wife thought it would be hilarious to see the maid play dress-up?" The word maid hung in the cold air, finally spoken aloud in its full cruel context. The pretense was vaporized. Sophia didn't look at Vanessa. She looked at Oliver, her eyes searching his for a denial, for any shred of the unexpected connection she might have felt moments ago. He saw the hope, fragile as a soap bubble, and then he saw it pop. His own hesitation, his inability to immediately refute Vanessa was the pin. A terrible, quiet understanding settled over her features. The composure didn't break. It solidified into something harder, colder, more regal. She was no longer hurt. She was resolved. "Thank you for the clarification, Miss Sterling," Sophia said, her voice miraculously steady, quieter than the city's distant hum. She turned her magnificent wounded dignity toward Oliver. "And thank you for the education. It has been profoundly illuminating." She walked back into the ballroom, not fleeing, but processing with the solemn grace of a dignitary leaving a failed summit. Oliver made a move to follow. "Let her go, Oliver," Vanessa sighed, as if bored. "The farce is over. She's going back to where she belongs. You can come back to where you belong." He turned on her, a fury so intense it stole his breath. "Where I belong," he spat, "in this frozen, vicious cesspool you call a world. You are a parasite, Vanessa, and for the first time in years I just saw someone who was truly, breathtakingly real, and I helped you poison it." He pushed past her, ignoring her stunned gasp, and plunged back into the crowd, his eyes desperately scanning for a glimpse of midnight velvet. "The truth is out. My heart is breaking for Sophia. Is yours? Type justice for Sophia in the comments right now, and if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? The best part is coming." He found her near the grand entrance, already handing her claim ticket to the coat check attendant. "Sophia, wait." She didn't turn. "The car is unnecessary. I'll take a taxi. Please, let me explain." Finally, she faced him. In the bright light of the foyer, he could see the sheen of unshed tears in her eyes, but they did not fall. Her gaze was direct, stripping him bare. "Explain what? The precise wording of the bet? The amount of the wager? You have nothing to explain. You were abundantly clear through your actions and your silence. I was a prop, a tool for your pride. I understand my role perfectly. That's not," he began, but the lie wouldn't form. "It was how it started. You could have said no," she continued, her voice trembling now with the force of her emotion. "You could have shown 1 ounce of human decency and left me out of your games. But you saw someone you thought was beneath you, and you decided her dignity was a fair price to pay for a moment's amusement with your friends." A single tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. She wiped it away with an angry, swift motion. "The worst part is, for a little while tonight, I thought I saw something else. I'm the fool." The attendant returned with her simple wool coat. She shrugged it on over the glorious velvet tuxedo, a symbolic return to her reality. "Sophia," he said, her name a plea. She paused, looking at him one last time. "Goodbye, Oliver. I hope your victory feels as hollow as it looks." She walked out the grand doors and disappeared into the night. Oliver stood rooted to the spot, the applause from the ballroom behind him sounding like the mocking roar of an ocean, ready to swallow him whole. Oliver did not return to the gala. He stood on the sidewalk where Sophia's taxi had vanished, the cold night air failing to numb the searing shame. He replayed every moment, her poised entrance, her quiet wit, the devastation in her eyes. He heard Amelia's laugh, Simon's bet, his own cold command. The joke had been a bomb, and he was left standing in the crater of his own character. He didn't call his driver. He walked for miles through the sleeping city, the echoes of his hollow life screaming in his ears. He arrived back at the penthouse as dawn bled gray light over the skyline. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was accusing. He went straight to his study and did something he'd never done. He accessed the archive security feed from the living room the night before. There it was, in high-definition cruelty. Amelia's sneer, his own arrogant, spiteful agreement. He scrolled through his encrypted group chat with the cohort. The messages were worse than he remembered. Photos of Sophia cleaning, captioned with laughing emojis. "Prepping Cinderella for the ball. What are the odds she cries?" A bet ledger Simon, $5,000 she spills wine. Amelia, $10,000 she calls everyone sir or ma'am. He felt physically ill. He had been the ringleader of this meanness by his compliance. As the sun fully rose, a resolve, hard and sharp, formed within him. This wasn't about guilt, it was about annihilation. The annihilation of the person he'd allowed himself to become. His first call was to his lawyer, draft a document, A grant, irrevocable, to cover all outstanding and future medical expenses for Robert Vance of Sandusky, Ohio. Connect it to a trust. Do it by noon. His second call was to his head of security. Change all access codes. Simon Fletcher, Amelia Fletcher, and their entire circle are permanently barred from all my properties and offices. Effective immediately. His third action was the hardest. He walked to the staff wing. He knocked softly on Sophia's door. There was no answer. Mrs. Henderson, the house manager, approached, her face wary. She left. Packed her things an hour ago. She said to tell you she resigns. The finality of it was a punch to the gut. Did she say where she was going? No, sir. He was too late. The one thing he needed to make right was gone. He spent the day in a furious, focused purge. He dissolved the social committee he chaired. He called Philip Lennox and personally withdrew his foundation's funding from the gala, citing ethical discrepancies. He let the word spread through the ecosystem. Oliver had cut out a cancerous circle, and the reason was a mystery. By late afternoon, he was in his car, directing his driver to the only address he had for her, a small walk-up apartment in a modest neighborhood. He stood on the sidewalk, holding a simple black folder, feeling more exposed than he ever had on any stage. The door opened. Sophia stood there, dressed in jeans and a sweater, her face clean of makeup, her eyes red-rimmed but calm. She looked like herself, the real, unadorned, formidable self. "You're harder to fire than I anticipated," she said, no warmth in her voice. "I'm not here as your employer," he said, his voice rough. "I'm here as the man who owes you a lifetime of apologies, but we'll start with one." He held out the folder. "This is not a bribe. It is not a salary. It is the first right thing I have done in a very long time. It's a grant, in your father's name. All his care is covered. For life." She stared at the folder as if it were a snake. "I don't want your money." "I know," he said. "That's why it's not for you. It's for him. Because you shouldn't have to trade your dignity for his comfort. No one should." Her tough facade wavered. She took the folder, her fingers brushing his. She opened it, scanned the first page, and her breath hitched. The legal language spelled out freedom from a weight she'd carried for years. "Why?" she whispered, looking up at him, truly confused. "Because when you walked away last night," he said, forcing himself to hold her gaze, to be nakedly honest, "I realized I had lost the only real thing to ever walk into my life, and I am a man who has spent his life acquiring things. I couldn't acquire your forgiveness, but I could try to deserve the chance to ask for it." Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they weren't of hurt. They were of overwhelmed relief, of a burden lifting so suddenly it left her dizzy. "I don't know if I can ever work for you again," she said. "I would never ask you to," he replied instantly. "The position is abolished, but the apartment is yours for as long as you want it. No strings." She was silent for a long moment, clutching the folder to her chest. The wind tugged at her hair. "They'll all say you lost your mind, that I'm a gold digger who tricked you." A faint, real smile touched his lips for the first time in days. "Let them talk. Their opinion is the currency of a world I'm no longer interested in." She searched his face, looking for the arrogance, the calculation. She saw only weary, sincere regret, and a determined, fragile hope. "What now?" she asked softly. "Now," he said, taking a careful step back, giving her space. "I go home, and you live your life free of one enormous worry. If someday you ever want to tell me about the architecture of silence again, you have my number." He turned to leave, his heart a wild, hopeful thing in his chest. "Oliver," he stopped. She walked up to him, stopped an arm's length away. "The apology, I need to hear it, not from the billionaire, from the man who was on that balcony." He understood. He looked directly into her hazel eyes, letting her see every ounce of his shame and his resolve. "Sophia Vance, I am so sorry. I was cruel, I was small, and I used the most beautiful spirit I've ever encountered as a weapon in a petty war. I will spend a very long time trying to be better. You have my word." A single tear traced her cheek. She nodded slowly, accepting the words, not yet the man, but leaving the door ajar. "Thank you." He nodded, a world of understanding passing between them. No grand gestures, no dramatic kisses, just a shattered vase, and two people looking at the pieces, wondering if something new could be built from them. He walked back to his car. She stood in her doorway, watching him go, the black folder held tightly in her hands, not an ending but a fragile, possible beginning. And that is how you turn a cruel joke into a new beginning. What did you think? Did Oliver deserve that chance? Let's discuss in the comments. This story took a lot of love to create. If it moved you, please honor that effort with a like, a subscribe, and share where in the world you're watching from. Your support writes the next story. Until next time.